What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Monday, March 9th. Okay, sorry about that little sound. It's Monday, March 9th, 2020, start of a brand new week, and we have got lots of things to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. That's 800-313-9443. And Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and observations. Boy, what a day it has been, especially on the stock market, down over 2,000 on a couple of occasions. Crude oil prices plunged nearly 25%, 7% down on our market, 9% down on Asian markets. It's just brutal out there. And that together, of course, with the coronavirus and that cruise ship finally docked at Oakland, they're now letting the people off. They're going through testing and decontamination. Then the ship is going to put out to sea again for 2 weeks so the captain and the crew can go through their quarantine. I imagine that'll be a little bit of fun having the cruise ship all to themselves here. All right, more about that a little bit later in the program. And before we get into this, I have a little bit of an announcement to make. I'm going to be taking just a little bit of vacation time starting tomorrow and extending probably through the end of next week. I'm not exactly sure. The website will be maintained. And if you just keep an eye up at the top of the website, it'll say when I'm coming back to the air. But I've got something I need to be doing. It's got nothing to do with my medical problems, but something I need to do, and I need a little vacation time. I don't remember the last time I took a vacation, and I don't consider being in the hospital as qualifying as vacation time. So we'll be doing that. We're trying to get some guest hosts in, and so it won't all be replays. All righty. Now, Sunday, we're going to have the next Democratic debate, and it's going to be one-on-one between Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, because the Democratic National Committee, once again, they changed the rules. And they changed the rules to make it impossible for Tulsi Gabbard to make this next debate. So it's going to be a one-on-one. That's going to put a lot of pressure on Biden to get through the debate without one of his famous flubs. And everyone's saying, why is Tulsi still in it? Well, Tulsi's still in it, I think, to make a point that, she's got gumption and staying power, and she may also be angling for a vice presidential tap. Or she's going to have to get in line behind Hillary Clinton, who's just dropping hints all over the place. She wants to be the vice president. And it looks like the strategy there is going to be that she's going to be Biden's vice president, and then Biden, because of his deteriorating mental state, won't make it through his first term in office. He'll be declared non-compos mentis, they'll 25th Amendment him, and voila, Hillary finally gets to be the first woman president of the United States of America. Anyway, Gabbard has called on Biden and Sanders to help put her on the debate stage. I don't think that's going to happen. Pardon me. And she's calling on Biden and Sanders to put pressure on the Democratic National Committee to allow her on stage for the next primary debate, which is coming up this coming Sunday. And I have to wonder, did they schedule that debate to guarantee a low viewership? Because it's scheduled right on top of the premiere of season 3 of Westworld. And I don't need to tell you which one I'm going to be watching. Of course, you can always DVR the debates and look at them later. So they're also changing the format of the debate, and Sanders staffers are saying they're trying to protect Biden. It's funny, they're still going with Biden, they're still pushing Biden, and yet everybody knows there's a problem there. He keeps saying very bizarre things. Now, he's had 2 brain aneurysms. He's passed the medical to serve in office, but that medical did not include a cognitive function test. Now, Bernie Sanders has got a youth vote problem. Young people love Bernie Sanders. They really do, but they're not showing up at the polls. And so for the younger members of our audience, regardless of who you're supporting, you can talk about them, you can say, I support them, but if you don't show up at the polls, it's absolutely meaningless. All right, getting on back to Hillary Clinton. Story coming on out of Sputnik News. Hillary Clinton would love to see someone becoming the first woman vice president. And she's out there arguing that the Democratic presidential nominee should take a really hard look at the Electoral College and plot accordingly in order to win the election, and not just the popular vote. She still won't let go of that. Okay? So apparently, she's out there being interviewed on CNN. When asked by Fareed Zakaria whether she thought two men in their 70s seeking the Democratic nomination would be essential, it would be essential for a vice presidential candidate to be a woman. So she wants a female vice president. Got somebody in particular in mind there, Ms. Hillary? And I'm not the only one who's saying this. There was another article came out of Sputnik News basically saying, how could Hillary Clinton claw her way to the presidency? And, you know, saying, yes, everybody knows this guy's got, he's got thinking problems. So it'll be Biden and Hillary as his vice presidential candidate. This is a tweet from James Wood. He will eventually gracefully resign as his dementia worsens, and voila, Madam President, at last. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And I'm sorry for the warble in my voice. I'm not sure why that's doing it today. Maybe too much milk or something. Now, Eric Prince is out there recruiting former spies to basically infiltrate liberal organizations. One of them, who is Richard Seddon, who's a former officer in Britain's Secret Intelligence Service, better known as MI6, and he's secretly working for the Trump re-election campaign. Well, by golly, that sounds like outside interference. But apparently, Seddon was recruited by Eric Prince, who's a security contractor aligned to the current U.S. administration. Pence's job was to recruit former American and British spies to service operations run by Project Veritas, a conservative group which uses undercover and underhand methods to target liberal and progressive causes. Well, I don't know that it's necessarily underhanded. It's definitely undercover. It's definitely a candid camera. The people that they catch are really saying these things. It's not deceptively edited. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about coronavirus. Fox News today was just almost all coronavirus news, including following that ship into San Francisco Bay and docking at Oakland here. But coronavirus is now in 34 states, including Indiana and Hawaii. And so people are getting very nervous around here. Our local market is stocked up on face masks and gloves, and they've already sold out of the sanitizers. The panic buying has even hit this very, very rural region here. Anyway, as far as that ship is concerned, there are 21 people with coronavirus aboard the Grand Princess cruise ship, which is now docked in Oakland. And it's been in limbo since last Wednesday, when officials learned a California man who traveled on the same ship last month died of coronavirus. Now, to me, that says that the virus is capable of surviving in the open for that long. You know, unless they identify a member of the crew who's a carrier. So, on Sunday, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said 4 people from the February Grand Princess voyage have been diagnosed with coronavirus. Anyway, U.S. coronavirus cases surpassed 500 as Italian deaths surge 57%. And according to the architect of our national pandemic strategy, he's saying, this is the most frightening disease I've ever encountered. Iran's coronavirus death toll rises by 21 to reach 145, including the second politician to die from the infection. And Iran is now threatening to use force to stop people traveling between cities while the streets are being disinfected. You know, it often seems that a lot of foreign countries are taking much more stringent steps to combat the coronavirus than we are. Anyway, let's take a phone call from Chris in Minnesota. Aloha, Chris. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Stick with the plan, Mike. Q predicted all of this, right?
Well, sort of, kind of, maybe.
I mean, are people really still believing that at this point? What do you think?
Believe in what?
In Q, that it's all a plan, that Trump's playing like 4D chess and that like he's in control, and the whole stock market crash is like, how can you even explain that?
Well, we knew that the stock market was hideously overvalued and there had to be a correction someplace. We know that Trump wanted to hold it off until after November's general election. We know the Democrats are just happy as all get out that it's happening now, because Trump really based the majority of his re-election campaign on how healthy the economy is being made to look. But we know the economy isn't healthy. All you have to do is look at how many homeless we have, how many retail vacancies there are in the shopping malls. This country's in serious economic trouble.
I know, but you can't make this like a partisan issue. Like, it's not. You can't just be like, oh, well, it's the Democrats. Oh no, it's the Republicans. Come on, Mike. They're all in on it.
Of course, they all messed it up. Through administration.
It's two sides of the same coin.
They made bad short-term decisions. Nobody wanted to address the underlying cause of our economic decline.
I know. Hey, did you see where? I saw this. I don't really know too much about it. Trump, he tweeted out something with his fiddle, and it had something to do with like Nero and the fall of Rome and all that.
No, I missed that one.
See any of that? What'd you say?
I said I missed that one.
Oh, okay. No, because I don't know. Do you know anything about Nero and all that? Like, I wasn't sure about it. Because, yeah, I guess he retweeted a picture of him, like, playing a fiddle, and then everybody, like, tore him a new one on Twitter because it was like, they were laughing. They were like, yeah, that's in reference to, like, the fall of Rome. Like, while Rome is burning, you're sitting there just playing a fiddle and stuff like that. Like, he was, like, making a joke about it.
Well, I did miss that one. I do know that Nero didn't play the violin because the violin hadn't been invented. He played a lyre.
No, I'm sorry, not the violin. The fiddle. The fiddle, right?
Yes.
Okay,
but,
yeah. I just think it's funny. And then, like, you give them bread and circuses, and they'll never revolt. And I feel like the whole political system now, that's all it is just bread and circuses at this point. I mean, and if you can't see that, I mean, I just don't. None of it makes sense, Mike. I mean, it's over with, right? Like you were always saying, you were like, you're waiting for the Soviet era style collapse. Well, is it here?
It may well be. It may well be, because if the economy falls apart completely, it will take the central government with it.
I mean, I hope then. I guess that we're going to invest in ropes and tar and feathers, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Or maybe not. Everybody will just go along with it, and they'll bail all the banks out again, and everybody, because they're so just like dumbed down and brainwashed, they'll just go along with it, like, oh yeah, because they wanted to keep everything going, I guess, right? And they'll just situation usual,
They'll live on
be like military police on the street.
The problem is, and it goes way back to that private central banking, which creates the money out of thin air and loans it at interest to the people. Sooner or later, the debt is unsupportable. No matter how hard people work, no matter how much they sacrifice, it has to come crashing down.
No, I agree. And then one more thing. Did you see a little while back where there was like an Israeli firm that held like a drill, or like it was like a stunt or something. They were saying that if there wasn't an election, they planned it all out. Like people weren't going to be able to go to vote. Stoplights were going to be shut down. There might be like some outbreak or something like that. So they basically scripted it. Like, do you really think that people are going to go out and vote in November? Like, I don't know. Is there even going to be an election this year, Mike?
Well, it depends on how serious the coronavirus scare gets. I mean, a lot of people are very scared, and of course the media isn't helping. Although today the media is definitely trying to play the calming voice, don't panic, sell your stocks. You can still fly on airplanes, you can still go on cruise ships. Let's keep the economy going here, and some of you may die, but that's a sacrifice we're willing to make.
And when they tell you not to panic, that's probably when you should probably pay attention, huh?
That's when you should panic.
Yeah. Right. I don't know. And then one more thing. Did anybody ever win the Israeli elections?
Well,
it was like the third or fourth one?
This is the third one, and Netanyahu
Did anybody win?
he got a plurality, and he thought he was going to form a coalition government with Benny Gantz, but it looks like Benny Gantz has found somebody else with which to form a coalition government, which is going to leave Netanyahu and Likud out in the cold. We'll be talking about that.
And then they all went to their voting booths wearing masks, and they had set up corona sites and all that too, right?
I don't know how much precautions were being taken during the election, because it's only been in the last 2 weeks that coronavirus has really sort of become the thing that it is.
Yeah, and that's the only democracy in the Middle East, right, Mike?
Well, that's what they like to claim.
Our greatest ally, right?
Yes, our good friend Israel. And you know, before Israel,
right?
we didn't have any enemies in the Middle East either.
Oh, I know, right? And we got to be over there because they're going to fight us over here. But the only reason that we're over there is because of, you know, and then just like how they treat all the ISIS fighters in their hospitals and stuff like that. But then supposedly Al Qaeda and ISIS attacked us on 9/11, but then they're treating their fighters in their hospitals, and you know, and they talk about, oh, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, but then what does that make them? Like, come on. It's all a scam, huh, Mike?
Yes, there's a lot of scamming going on, and that's what makes it difficult for ordinary people. We're not sure who to trust or who to believe. And at this point, we fall back on my own advice. Be your own best analyst. Think for yourself.
Yeah. The only person that's going to take care of you at the end is yourself, right?
That's exactly right.
You know? And then maybe, I'll say this and I'll let you go. One more thing. Maybe, because a lot of people were waking up to everything that was going on. You know, I know you don't want to talk about, like, you know, the Jewish question and stuff like that. And just like what I said a second ago about how, like, they're treating Al Qaeda and they're funding them, arming them, and giving them weapons. I feel like a lot of people were waking up to that. And this is the virus is another way just to crack down, just to shut everything down, like more censorship, everything. So I guess it's gonna play its part different ways, right? But I don't know. I guess we'll see here. I got
you know, pushing the cashless society. The World Health Organization came out and said, don't use money. Viruses and germs live on money, which is silly. Germs.
Yeah, they're burning all the paper dollar notes and everything because they might have the virus on it. Yeah.
There actually is a bactericide inside the paper for the U.S. banknote. I hope I'm not giving away a Treasury Department secret here, but there is a bacteriostatic chemical to limit the money carrying germs. Whether it'll work on a virus or not, I do not know.
Well, I got like 2 or 3 years worth of like storable popcorn stored up, ready, you know, to just kick my feet up and watch the show, you know, just watch it all come crumbling down. So I'm good to go.
Lots of good nutrition there in that popcorn. That'll keep you alive.
And a bunch of whiskey. I got whiskey
too,
so that'll
well,
help.
I'm hanging out in your place then.
All right, Mike, have a good show, man. I'll talk to you.
All right, thanks an awful lot here. All right, we're talking about the coronavirus, we're talking about COVID-19. It's pretty much shut down Silicon Valley. Apple has told all of its 12,000 staff at Cupertino to work from home with immediate effect. This follows Facebook and Microsoft doing exactly the same thing. Google is telling their employees in Washington State to work remotely. Remember, most of the U.S. deaths have happened in Washington State. They're still not exactly sure why, except for that one cluster at that nursing home. Okay, Palestinian Authority leader Mohammed Abbas has declared a month-long state of emergency in the West Bank after 7 cases of coronavirus were diagnosed in the Bethlehem area. Apparently, let's see, new calls for social distancing. I'm watching the Fox News feed here. You know, they're still out there saying, well, you know, coronavirus isn't that bad. I mean, 37,000 people died of the flu, you know, over the last 12 months. Okay, I have a question. Let's talk about the last 3 to 4 months and how many of those deaths attributed to flu were actually the coronavirus before people became aware it was out there. Because the symptoms are remarkably similar. You know, and scientists are saying, well, coronavirus isn't the flu, but it presents as the flu. Somebody comes on in, they're displaying symptoms that look like the flu, and then they die. What do you write on the death? We got to take a break. Right back after these screens.
Oh,
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And a reminder that Republic Broadcasting Network is in the middle of a fundraiser, and Republic definitely needs your help. So the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity, cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. The network thanks you. Okay. Getting on back to the coronavirus, British supermarkets are now starting to ration food as customers strip the shelves in the coronavirus panic. And like I said, it's even hit here in Santa Claus, Indiana. They're completely out of sanitizer. Of course, you can make your own. All it takes is, 90% alcohol and aloe, and plus whatever essential oils you want to give it an aroma. Anyway, all right, let's take another phone call. Mark in Montana. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Got to talk about the oil and gas. Right in the heart of it here in Midland, Odessa, Texas, which is the heart of the Permian Basin, and the oil closed at 41 on give or take on Friday, and it's down to 30 and some change this morning.
Wow.
Afternoon, I guess. I'm talking bloodbath, man. All the companies are already just dumping people left and right. I'm about 5 miles out of town. I went into town for a little bit, pick up some donuts this morning, and talked to a lot of people. I talk a lot, and most of them they're saying, look, we've already got layoffs. My company here that I'm with, they've already laid some people off last night in the middle of the night. I'm a newcomer, and I didn't get laid off, so I guess I'm feeling fortunate, but I also don't have work today, so I don't. It's scary, man. A lot of these people rely on.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, a lot of these are good paying middle class blue collar jobs. Almost everybody out here makes six figures, and everything out here is relying on it. And most of these folks are like me. I live in Montana, and I come down here for work, and I take my salary home with me to that small town I live in. I dump a lot of money into the economy up there, and most of these folks here are like that. They're from small towns all over the Midwest, and they take a lot of money home and dump it into these small communities.
Well, it's a very scary time, and unfortunately, it looks as long as Russia and Saudi Arabia maintain this oil war, it's probably going to get even worse.
I'm not sure how low they can go with it. There's a point where you can't sell it for less than the lift costs are.
Yes.
Now, I understand Saudi Arabia and Russia have a lot lower lift costs than, say, West Texas or North Dakota, because our labor is expensive and our permits and our government regulation, that adds a lot of money to the cost of the barrel of oil. They don't have a lot of that over there. Plus, some of those places they use virtually slave labor. They pay them, a few cents a day. But I'm scared, man. I've got a job as of now, but I'm scared.
Well, I hope you get to keep your job, obviously, and you're absolutely right. If it takes a barrel's worth of energy to get a barrel of oil to the surface, the party is over.
Well, yeah, it's not quite like that, but if it's taken less than a barrel, I mean, if they're selling it at $30 a barrel, that's below lift costs out here. I think some of the exploration will continue. They'll punch the holes. Well, stuff is cheap because they'll be able to get the rigs for a lot cheaper day rate. And I think as they get those rigs for a cheaper day rate, they'll punch the holes. They'll cap everything off. They'll get it ready for the time when the oil goes back up to 55 or 60.
Well, who's really going to take the hit, of course, is the shale oil, because as I understand it, their lift cost is a lot higher than the conventional oil wells.
Well, about 99% of the oil now in the United States is shale oil. It costs a little bit more because of the fracturing procedures that they do.
Yes.
You know, but that fracturing also increases the output by 30%. So it would be insane to not fracture a well and take that 30% hit on it. That's why in places like New York State, there's no longer drilling up there because New York's made fracturing illegal. So there's no oil drilling or gas drilling up there anymore. And it's not as evil as everybody makes it out to be. All it is if you imagine shale oil as a big sandwich with lots of layers with lettuce and tomato and onions and all that, all you're doing is you're drilling a hole down, then you do your directional until in the zone that you want. Let's say the tomato zone, and then you punch down there. You punch either an acidizer or an alkali, and it breaks that shale up, and then you pump sand down in it. And the sand keeps the shale layers open so that the oil can flow out. It's not as evil as people make it out to be. Sometimes they just use baking soda solution, depending on what they have. I hear the music, so I'll let you go. Thank you.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And we've had a lot of callers into the show talking about how airline flights are still coming in from places like Italy, South Korea, Japan. And they're concerned about, what's really going on. Well, as it turns out, according to Business Insider, airlines are burning thousands of gallons of fuel flying empty planes so they can keep their flight slots during the outbreak. And apparently there are European rules saying that airline operators can lose their flight slots if they keep the planes on the ground. So these flight crews are just basically taking empty aircraft and flying them back and forth to keep the routes open. So it may not be that these planes are really bringing in lots and lots and lots of people here. The White House is getting ready to implement their plan for the outbreak, talking about doing more things virtually online, having meetings on conference calls. And so they're preparing emergency measures to allow staff to work from home and avoid a government shutdown. Okay, now this next one really kind of annoyed me, and I think it's probably going to annoy you as well. The CNBC editor, Rick Santelli, basically went out and said the world would be better off if everyone was given coronavirus to, quote, get it over, end quote, and stop wreaking havoc on the financial markets. Still out there trying to blame our economic problems on the coronavirus. And we know the market was already in trouble. We know our economy's in trouble. We know that the reason for the massive downturn today, the Dow closed at 2013.76, had to do more with the oil shock than coronavirus, but they're still out there pushing it. But this guy just basically came on out and said, just make everybody sick, get it over with, and let's get back to making money on the stock market. Now, he has since retracted that comment and apologized for it, but it basically shows you the mindset of the banking class. As I mentioned to one of our callers earlier, the World Health Organization officials are warning coronavirus can spread through handling money. They're urging people to use credit cards or electronic payments instead. Well, electronic payments are certainly not going to pass the virus along here. The plastic, well, that depends, because in some cases you may have to hand it off to, for example, a server at a restaurant, in which case it's going to be just as contagious as paper money, except that you're going to get it back as well. So I'm not sure it's an automatic panacea, but it does look like they're trying to use this crisis to push for the cashless society. And as I mentioned before, there is a bacteriostatic chemical in the paper that our banknotes are made from. As far as the coinage is concerned, that's another matter entirely, and maybe it might be worthwhile, spraying that with alcohol. Or take it into the bank, run it through their change machine. Okay, the American Conservative Union has confirmed that an attendee to the 2020 CPAC tested positive for the novel coronavirus. Actually, I think that number is now up to 2. And apparently, there's a concern because the CPAC speakers included President Trump, Vice President Pence, and Secretary of State Pompeo. Now, two politicians who met the guy who tested positive are now in self-quarantine. One of them is Ted Cruz. So they're in self-quarantine. Both of them say they feel fine. They're not showing symptoms, but they are going to stay home and stay isolated for 2 weeks. All right, let's talk about the international news now. Okay, the new ceasefire around Idlib is already crumbling. And apparently on the 6th of this month, the Syrian region of Greater Idlib entered another ceasefire phase with al-Qaeda-linked groups breathing a sigh of relief thanks to Turkish sacrifices in the battle against the Syrian army. However, the pause just reduced the tensions rather than put an end to them. A few minutes after the start of the ceasefire agreed to by Russian and Turkish presidents, an intense fighting erupted between Hayat Tahrir al-Sham and pro-government forces. Okay. Now, here's an interesting little story. This one came out of veteranstoday.com. Communications intercepts and intelligence from inside Turkey, Turkish-backed terror groups, tell an interesting stories. Apparently, American special forces have been deployed there for the last 2 days. Loads of cash, promises of U.S. passports, and families resettled in the U.S. And apparently, the U.S. forces are to set up ambushes and suicide bombings against Turkish outposts in Idlib to bring about an end to the truce negotiated in Moscow between Erdogan and Trump on March 5th. So, anyway, now here's a bizarre statement. This came out of the United States. It's from Middle East Monitor. And basically, the United States is saying that Turkey has a full right to defend itself in Syria. That's like saying the Nazis had a right to defend themselves in France. Turkey has invaded the sovereign territory of Syria, up by Idlib. They're an invading force. Technically, it's an act of war. Nobody's declared war, but that could happen at any moment. But no, as a matter of fact, Turkey does not have a right to do anything in Syria other than to turn around and go home. Everything they do is a crime, because war is the greatest crime of it all, because it wraps up all the other crimes inside itself. Murder, theft, dispossession of families, rape occasionally. What am I saying? Occasionally, a lot of that. So Mike Pompeo over at the State Department was saying, quote, "We believe firmly that our NATO partner Turkey has the full right to defend itself against the risk that's being created by what Assad, the Russians, and the Iranians are doing inside of Syria." Well, if Turkey doesn't want to handle the risk, go home. We should do exactly the same thing. Now, it looks like Erdogan's offensive has stalled, if not outright failed, and now he's calling for an immediate ceasefire along the existing lines. There's the little rub. He basically wants to hang on to that little bit of Syria that he's already conquered. I don't think Syria is going to go for that. Throughout February, Erdogan demanded the Syrian army stopped its Idlib advances against al-Qaeda-held Idlib and falls back to the starting lines. Throughout February, he threatened that if the Syrians did not do this, his military would make them. Well, that didn't work out all that well. A lot of people got killed, a lot of tanks got destroyed, and so now he's saying ceasefire on existing lines, and I don't think Syria will go for that. Syria wants their original borders back. And I love the way this headline phrases it. This has come from southfront.org. Turkish forces are on tactical retreat, which is a polite way of saying they're running like heck. Syrian army recaptures more territory in eastern and southern Idlib. Oh, my goodness. Erdogan's forces are not doing very well. It's a bloody mess over there. Emphasis on the bloody here. Okay, apparently there was an attempt at a chemical attack in Idlib. A 15-member terrorist group tried to explode ammunition containing chemical substances in the vicinity of Sarakib in the Idlib countryside. Syria News wrote, the possibility of another chemical hoax continues to loom. Over in Saudi Arabia, a little bit of palace intrigue. Game of Thrones or Game of Turbans, whatever. Mohammed bin Salman is widening his purge. Dozens of royals and army officers are swept up after powerful princes arrested. And it's looking a lot like the infamous Ritz-Carlton Riyadh shakedown of 2017. There was a raid Friday morning on the homes of King Salman's brother, Prince Ahmed bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, and Prince Mohammed bin Nayef bin Abdulaziz, rented lips, in Saud. Now, I believe that Ahmed bin Abdulaziz Al Saud was the original crown prince. All right, we're going to take a phone call from Joe in Tennessee. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, they're talking about Trump letting the FISA court law, expire and not non-renewing it. It's just kind of funny because we've all known about FISA court corruption for over 2 years. And now that it looks like the Republicans and the Trump might not renew it, all of a sudden the FISA court judges are saying, oh, we're not going to let the FBI people involved in the FISA abuses represent anybody or come before the court. They waited 2 years before the FISA court showed any kind of outrage or wanted to do any kind of a correction. But now that it looks like they're not going to get renewed and they want to get renewed so they can keep their phony baloney government jobs and subvert the Constitution against any of their political rivals. Of course, now, like 2 weeks before it expires, all of a sudden they're getting real brave. These judges, including Supreme Court Roberts, all of a sudden, oh boy, they have integrity and they're worried about the integrity of their court, because the money might get cut off. Well, all I can say to Trump and his advisors is, hey, get your heads examined if you renew the FISA court. Punish them. Make an example. The FISA court, bury it. Never again in the history of the world should there be a FISA court. And the reason is because of those corrupt bastard judges. Let it fall on them. They can sit there and talk about the FBI. Well, the FBI, they're always going to try to finagle past judges and get what they want. But those corrupt, vile judges that sit on that FISA court, they should be ashamed of themselves. And the FISA court needs to be basically burned to the ground and never used ever again. And when they ask in the history books why, just list the names of those judges. This is why there's no FISA court, because of this corrupt, whatever his name is, son of a bitch. And it's because of this corrupt judge, federal judge, son of a bitch. And this Supreme Court Justice Roberts, who's supposed to oversee the FISA court, he should have to be, personally, he should resign in disgrace because of what they did. They weaponized the court system against a political rival, and now, because they might not get renewed, all of a sudden they wanted to, we don't want the FBI that were involved in that to ever testify before our courts again. Isn't that really big of them? Isn't that really something? They really are such disgraces, and it's such transparent disgraces. They should have, it's almost better if they just would have shut their mouths and try to reach out like this as the pathetic little losers that they are. I swear they should. It's amazing to me that they're even allowed to sit on the bench after what they've done. It's kind of like Comey and Rosenstein, the way they've disgraced their institutions. Now, the FBI has always been a disgraceful institution as far as I'm concerned, with Waco and JFK, Vince Foster, 9/11, Oklahoma City. We can go on and on about, how corrupt they are. But really, they really disgraced it. Even as much as it was disgraceful, they really went over the top disgracing it. And I just hope that more of this stuff comes out so that it breaks through the mainstream media's embargo on the corruption of the FBI. And personally, I look at what's going on here with this coronavirus and the destruction of the economy because of it. And I must say I have to put some of the blame on Trump. And I'm not blaming Trump because of his response to the virus. I'm blaming Trump because he never attacked these. He's still letting Barr sit on all these deep state criminals. And as they all should have been perped walk and been arrested months ago, and nothing's happening. And these people, these coup plotters, these deep state people are just turning the screws and destroying the economy with this coronavirus, if you ask me. And, you know, Trump, it almost serves him right. And, you know, if you allow, you know, people that scheme against you and your country to just get away with it without any kind of retribution or they're gonna cook up something even worse, you know, and that's might be what they've done. And like I said, I'm really, you know, I heard people blame Trump on this, and I'm not blaming him completely, but I have to say that in my mind, the fact that he's allowed these, you know, unconstitutional government agents to do what they've done is just empowered them. And there's no, you know, if he's going to let them just get away with attempting a coup against elected president with no repercussions, then why not a bioweapon? You know, you know, start a little bioweapon, get everybody panicked and destroy the economy. You know, and then that'll get rid of him as president, right?
Yeah.
So, I got to say, you know, I just get so angry because I've been on the horn calling and trying to get, even the president saying, when are you going to arrest these people? You know, they ask me for money. I'm like, no indictments, no money. You know, what's he waiting for? You know, so they can stir up another bioweapon, you know, something else. You know, it just amazes me. And that, you know, so it's kind of very disappointing. And you mentioned Tulsi earlier, and I think that Tulsi just kind of shows the hypocrisy of the establishment and the whole feminist thing, you know? I mean, if it was any other woman but Tulsi that they were keeping out of the debates, they'd be, you know, burning their bras in front of the Supreme Court or wherever, protesting this. And what the DNC did, you know, they keep changing the rules to keep her out of the debates. You know, you'd have every woman on talking head on the networks talking about sexism and misogyny and patriarchy. But since it's Tulsi and she's not like an establishment woman, then, you know, it's okay to do that to her. And it's the same way with conservative women. It's okay. You know, the whole feminist thing and the misogyny labels, it's only used for liberal causes. It only empowers the left and the establishment deep state people. It's the same way with racism. You know, these things about blacks and all that. As long as they're like on the plantation blacks and they're lefty blacks, well, they can, you know, they're going to be in their corner all the way. But you get a guy like Clarence Thomas, and they forget all about him being black real quick. So it's you know, once again, I love seeing the hypocrisy of our ruling class. Is highlighted for everybody to see, because that's important for them to lose any credibility. So hopefully they become like the king in, you know, the Emperor's New Clothes. I think that's becoming more and more the way it is with our establishment. But once again, Trump, you know, I think Trump should. I've said for a couple of years now he should declare martial law because of the deep state coup against him, and I think he should declare martial law as a medical martial law right now. Why not? I mean, you have a bureaucracy that's got its you know, corrupt and so criminal against them. You know, they tried to impeach him. They keep cooking up all these fake, you know, whatever you want to call it, crimes that they say he committed, and they're the ones that are committing the crimes. I think that you know, be bold. Just declare a medical martial law, cancel the elections. Why not? A Democrat would do it.
All right. Well, listen, Joe, I got to let you go. We got to take another break for commercials, and we will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, Turkey is forcibly transporting migrants to the Greek border and pushing them across. You know, this is more than simply opening the border and luring the migrants there. They're literally putting them on buses, forcibly transporting them there and pushing them across. And apparently, at one point, Turkey used a large tracked vehicle and a cable to literally tear down part of that border fence so that the migrants could get across here. The Turkish and Greek forces have been trading tear gas with each other. This is getting very serious. This could easily turn into open conflict. Now, Turkey has sent 1,000 special forces to the EU border to prevent the migrant return. Erdogan is out there simply saying, look, just let them through. They won't stay there in Greece. They're going to go on to those really nice countries up there in Europe. But what he doesn't seem to comprehend is that the Turkish border is also the border of the EU as a whole. And that's why so many other countries in the EU are getting involved in this. Now, apparently, Erdogan is in serious political trouble at home and outside Turkey. And it looks like he may be coming to an end here. His offensive in Idlib has bogged down. And a day before he's scheduled to meet with Russian President Putin, the Turkish parliament degrades quickly as opposition speaks out against his Syria campaign. That prompted the fist fight that we all saw last week. Okay, apparently, U.S. personnel are to be investigated for war crimes in Afghanistan. Last Thursday, the International Criminal Court appeals judges authorized an investigation into allegations of war crimes by U.S. military and intelligence personnel, Afghan forces, and the Taliban in Afghanistan in a case that has triggered a diplomatic backlash from Washington. Basically, they're saying, how dare you? How dare you investigate us for war crimes? You can't do that. So the ICC has authorized the investigation, and Pompeo is out there blasting the renegade and reckless ICC. And he said, this is a direct quote, "This is a truly breathtaking action by an unaccountable political institution masquerading as a legal body. It is all the more reckless for this ruling to come just days after the United States signed a historic peace deal on Afghanistan, the best chance for peace in a generation," which has already unraveled, I might add here. Last week, we were talking about the number of suicides in the military. And according to this article that came out of Press TV, there's a spike in suicides amongst veterans of British military campaigns in Afghanistan. And apparently they're killing themselves in record numbers. What is it they've seen? What is it they were forced to do? According to the Times newspaper, some 14 former and serving Army personnel have killed themselves in the past 2 months alone. Oh. Anyway. Apparently, Great Britain, not content with mucking about in Afghanistan, is now planning to go into Mali. Okay, we have to take a quick station identification. Join us on the air, 800-312-9443, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Over in Israel, and I hinted at this at the top of the hour, there's been a bit of a development involving the third general election in 11 months. And neither of the two main blocs won a majority in the parliament. Now, Netanyahu was approaching Benny Gantz to form a coalition government, which would have left Netanyahu as prime minister. But there's been a development because apparently Benny Gantz has accepted a list of secularist demands from Avigdor Lieberman. And if they get together, they can form a coalition government, and that would leave Likud party and Netanyahu as toast. Going to be left out in the cold. And Netanyahu gets his day in court for all of his corruption charges here. Okay, the United States is getting ready to sell Pegasus tanker jets to Israel, which would allow its fighters to reach Iran's territory. The State Department has greenlit the sale of 8 KC-46A Pegasus tanker aircraft, along with spare parts and supporting equipment, for $2.4 billion. If the deal passes the Congress, Tel Aviv can expect to receive its first jets in 2023. The State Department also noted that the aerial tankers will not only boost Israel's national security posture, but will also be of great help to the United States itself. All right, this one, and again, this is what the Palestinians have to live with. Apparently, Israeli occupation forces shot sponge-tipped bullets at 2 Palestinian children in East Jerusalem in 2 separate incidents. Both incidents occurred in Issawiyah, which has experienced almost a year of violent harassment by Israeli occupation forces. According to Haaretz, 16-year-old Mohammed Adia was shot Monday while standing in his schoolyard, and his arm was fractured, which tells you the sponge tips really don't do all that much. 10-year-old Fazi Abid, meanwhile, was shot Tuesday while standing on the balcony of his home. All right, we're going to take a phone call now. Dan in Washington State. Aloha, Dan. Welcome to the show. How are you feeling?
I'm still alive. I'm not sick yet.
Okay, good.
I'm aggravated, though.
What are you aggravated about?
Well, I got a new phone plan. I got Verizon. Basically made me kick me off of Verizon, and it's kind of a long story, but I got T-Mobile, and then I tried to call in Republic, the call-in line.
Yeah.
Because I usually listen by phone, and they says that they charge by the minute now because it's like teleconferencing. Have you heard of them doing that? I don't know if they're starting to censor.
I hadn't heard about that, but I
these
mean,
call-in
if it's
shows.
a toll-free line, I mean, Republic Broadcasting is paying for that.
Yeah, because T-Mobile wants to charge us. And I called. They said, "Oh yeah, we changed our policy now. It's a call-in chat line. We charge a cent per minute." And I'm like, "Well, Sprint did not charge, but Verizon, I think, said I was violating their terms of service too, and they wouldn't really tell me why, and that's why I canceled Verizon. But he kept reading the policy is all he would do about chat lines. So I don't know. Are they starting to censor the call-in lines or charge
No,
you?
they may be desperate for money in the tightening economy here. By the way, I just got a note here from our control room. We now have a working player on our webpage, and it's prominent on the mobile site. And actually, RBN does not pay for the listen lines. In fact, they pay us. Well, that's a good deal.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Now, if it was actually you were getting some money, and we call in and you were getting the cent per minute, but I don't want to pay the phone company just for the privilege of calling. But I actually did listen to the player online. I go to the website, and then it will play for like 10 minutes, and then I have to get out of the web page and then go back on and hit play again to like reboot the web page, or it will just cut out on me as I'm driving down the road. And I don't know if that's a setting I have on my phone, or it's like company doing that, or I don't know.
Well, if you're driving down the road, is it possible that you're hitting a gap in the cell coverage and that's disconnecting the line completely?
It could be, and that's what I'm trying to figure out. I guess first I was focusing on the call-in thing because I didn't know if there's certain carriers doing that, charging a cent per minute to call in. But yeah, I honestly, I don't think it's a break in the service because it seems to happen every 10 minutes. I'll listen and then it will stop. And then I'll have to back out of the web page, basically refresh it, and then hit play again.
Well, I'm sure our technicians will look into that and see if there's an issue. And yeah, in fact, I'm getting a word from the control room. They're going to check out the player while driving and see what the problem might be.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Yeah, that's all I had. If you heard about that, and so far, just a lot of closures and stuff about the coronavirus. But nobody I know has it yet, so we'll see how it goes.
All right. Well, we're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are rejoining the network, and we're going to go back to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
That's it. Nobody has it yet. It's coming. It's Mike, for a grand prize of 100,000 gallons of Corona beer, who said we're in a big, fat, ugly bubble? In the presidential elections of 2016.
Yes.
You know? Did you see the front of the Drudge Report?
No, I did not.
Holy crap, Mike. All these people infected, like the Marine and the Navy personnel, and in Italy. Did you see the video of the Italians? Because it was leaked, they were going to quarantine parts of northern Italy. Did you see that video of them rushing to the train?
Yeah, 16 million people are under quarantine in Italy right now. 16 million. And they, almost half the entire country, and I'm sorry, 25% of the entire country is under quarantine right now.
Did you see there's also the video of the woman they had in like the sealed off chamber, bringing her off the plane?
No, I missed that one.
she's like in that incubator bubble. Like, holy crap, man! Like, this. I don't think this is a joke, people. At this point, I mean, and Mike, I was watching a New York press conference, and did you talk about this yet? Where they're going to start selling their own disinfectant sprays and stuff, and look like hand sanitizer in New York. And I wonder who got the contract for that. One of the cronies, I bet. But I was watching and a 7-year-old, not 70, a 70-year-old has gotten the coronavirus. I don't know how bad it is, if it's bad at all. But I mean, this is not good what's going on here. Throw in the economy, the oil thing, which has to do with maybe the coronavirus. I don't know. Isn't it odd how all this stuff's coming? Mike, I'm telling you, something going on here now because it's all coming apart, right? It's all coming apart. And the coronavirus was that, like Peter Schiff says, we're in a big bubble and all it needs is a little prick to burst the bubble. Right?
Yeah, that may be it. That may well be it.
But yeah, I see. Did you talk about they had that fight in Britain over the toilet paper? Why do people always go like, it's like, don't fight over the last can of like corn or something, got to fight over toilet paper. Like, it's crazy, but you notice how people fight on Black Friday for that cheap $89 TV?
Yes.
They also fight over toilet paper now. But you see how people become animals, like that's how quick. This is how quick your society breaks down, people. Like it's crazy. And yeah, I don't know. Did you see what also Trump tweeted? I don't know how long ago if this was true. He said that if the stock market ever went down over 1,000 points, the person should be loaded into a cannon and shot into the sun. Is that a true statement he made?
I'm not aware that he actually tweeted that, but then I don't follow his Twitter account. I probably ought to.
But it's crazy what's going on. Like, with the economy and stuff like now, we could have maybe we'll have 2,000 points up tomorrow. I don't know. I wasn't paying attention late this afternoon. Did they do any announcements with tax cuts or any?
Not yet. Not yet. They haven't. And, it did end down over 2,000 points on the Dow.
Breaking news, plunge protection team tried to do something, but they got sucked in a toilet. Last seen floating off the East Coast somewhere.
Well, in the middle of the day, it looked like the PPT was trying to do something, but it didn't stick. I think people are just aware that, somebody was out there trying to manipulate the markets higher and start a buying spree, but it didn't work. And I think tomorrow is going to be a lot worse.
Yeah, man. I was listening to Rush Limbaugh. He was like, the oil prices are great for people. You're going to get a couple cents off each gallon, but what about those people who they're in the stock market and bought commodities? like the shale oil. Oh my God, they're probably getting crushed, huh?
The oil companies are getting crushed. The cruise lines are getting crushed. Airlines are getting crushed.
And I'm trying to think of something else that I was looking up. And going back to the oil thing, what do you make of the oil? Can this be orchestrated by Saudi Arabia and Russia, like Putin and
Well, it doesn't seem to be orchestrated. It seems to be a competition. It's a two-way race to the bottom to try and capture market share with lower prices. And the way they get the lower prices is they open up the valve and they just flood the market with cheap oil.
What about the petrodollar? What happens to that if you got cheap oil? How does that work now? If it's cheap oil, is the petrodollar's worth that? Federal government doesn't receive as much money though, right? Like if the oil price is low?
That's right. The petrodollar is going to be worth less.
And that's pretty much all I got to say, Mike. Have a good show, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right, thanks an awful lot. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Getting on back to the international news, apparently the U.S. Army is considering scrapping, or actually has scrapped, the $1 billion Iron Dome project. The Army was planning to buy 2 more Israeli missile defense batteries and integrate the system into existing air defenses, but Israel refused to provide key codes to address issues of cyber vulnerabilities and other problems, and so the Army just pulled the plug on the deal. Meanwhile, the U.S. is going to provide additional military aid to Ukraine, including armed patrol boats. And members of Congress have been informally notified by the Defense Department's plans to provide $125 million in new military assistance. Okay, talking about the economic news. Saudi Arabia has started an all-out oil war, and Mohammed bin Salman is destroying OPEC by flooding the market and slashing oil prices. So, commodity world is still stinging, if you will, from the November 2014 Saudi decision to temporarily break apart OPEC and flood the market with oil in the failed hopes of crushing U.S. shale producers who survived thanks to generous banks extending loan terms and even more generous buyers of junk bonds. It nonetheless resulted in a painful manufacturing recession as the price of Brent cratered as low as the mid-20s in late 2015, early 2016. So it looks like we're heading in for a repeat of that, and it's going to get ugly. All righty. Another story, this one from Investment Watch blog. We are staring at the abyss of a credit crunch. The bond market is basically confirming a lot of death coming. Goldman Sachs cuts the Brent price target to $30 with possible dips near 20. All right, we're going to take a phone call. James in Tokyo, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha to you too, and I'm in a bad mood, Mike, with the stock market going down so bad. And Dustin, again, fake news Dustin was right on with about the stock market. It really crashed. I was like, when I saw it first go down about over like 1,400 points, I was like, oh my God. And then they stopped the market. And there were a couple things I saw, like one thing was like down about 39%. And this wasn't like something it was something kind of related to gas, but it wasn't related to the price of oil going down because it's more like a pipeline, and they're only related to the volume. And the volume would go down a lot, I guess, because the people due to the coronavirus are not going to be driving a lot. It will be hit, but it's not going to be hit that bad compared to other stuff. So I got in there and like an idiot, and I got in there on like a market loan because I'm a retired guy. I'm all in, and anyway, I got in pretty big, and I made a lot of money anyway. But I woke up. I fell asleep. I woke up, and I was only like half as good as I was before. The time that I fell asleep. And yeah, it's very incredible. I mean, just seeing how low that everything has become, and they have so many great stocks that are making money that are like now like where the distributions or dividends are up to like 18 to 20%. It's really amazing. As far as the corona, I mean, like how does that affect people? I mean, I'm sure. Well, here, as I mentioned last week, everybody walks around in fear. I'm in fear. I stopped going to the gym as soon as I get my gym equipment coming in tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, I'm off to traveling to my beach house and my son maybe Kyoto or this or that. But yeah, it's just a very strange time, Michael. What are your thoughts, man, my man?
Well, it is a very strange time indeed, and obviously we're worried and we're very concerned about it. And how did the stock market do there in Japan?
Well, in Japan, it crashed too, like maybe over like 5%, but the Nikkei. However, the reason I'm up now is I don't understand the Japanese stock market, so like I invested in the U.S. stock market. So it's a whole time difference, So I got the new before last Friday was 20. And I was like, okay, I'm in, get me in for some money. And then, I sold in the high 14s, and I watched it go in the high 50s. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to bed. I'll wait tomorrow. Trump is going to come out. The Fed's going to come out. They're going to say how much money they're going to sock it into the market and, reduce interest rates even more and this and that. But then I woke up and I was like, right, half an hour before the market closed, and it was back down to in the high 14s. I'm like, I better sell this, because there could be even a better opportunity tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. It's just people are scared, and I think I saw this one thing about the corona where this doctor came out. He's like, a lot of people who are older that get it, they're dying, but we got this young guy that had it, and he would feel good, and then finally this comes in, finally with symptoms, and 30 minutes after the symptoms that he came in, he's dead. So this whole virus could be even more serious than I believe that anyone has even thought about.
I would tend to agree. Anyway, James, we got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials. Back with another phone call after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to go back to the phones to Ken in New York. Aloha, Ken. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Do you know whether there's any question about the validity of the testing? I find it hard to understand how a good portion of Italy's population could be affected by this, when I thought it was supposed to be primarily Chinese.
They're not affected yet. They're merely quarantined.
Oh, okay. So they haven't actually been tested?
Well, some people have, and they've got a lot of people who've got the coronavirus, COVID-19, and they have had, I think, a few deaths now. But the government is moving to make sure that it doesn't spread any further. In fact, somebody just sent me a breaking news where apparently Italy wants to put the entire country under quarantine, which is going to hammer tourism and business. As it is, the areas already under quarantine represent the economic heart of the already fragile Italian economy.
Now, the testing doesn't give a direct, how would you say, a correlation. It's like something secondary to looking at.
Well, my understanding is they're using what's called a PCR test to try and identify a genetic pattern that corresponds to that of the virus. They're probably also using some antibodies tests right now because the CDC's initial tests were all botched. A lot of places are basically coming up with their own tests, and I would assume they're probably using different methodologies.
Right, but there's no way to directly view the virus except if you're using a scanning electron microscope, you're viewing it kills the virus, doesn't it?
Yes, it would. It could actually tear it apart, so you're making identification difficult. But no, it would take too much time and cost too much to test everybody using a scanning electron microscope.
Yeah, and the only, as I understand it from what I've read, the only person that was ever able to view live viruses was the Royal Rife.
I believe you're correct.
All right, thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot, Ken. We're going to let you go here. And getting on back to the news. Never let a good crisis go to waste. So we're looking at this story coming out of Mint Press News. Big banks are calling for Wall Street deregulation to fight coronavirus. Oh, the virus is messing up our markets. We must have, more regulations taken away here. Well, deregulation of Wall Street is how we got into this mess, going all the way back to when Glass-Steagall was repealed, which triggered the 2008 meltdown. And now we're on the edge of another meltdown because Wall Street is not being regulated. And Wall Street cannot regulate itself. That's the historic truth here. And so the Bank Policy Institute released a set of proposals, the most important of which recommended that the Federal Reserve lower capital requirements to zero. This would mean banks could lend an unlimited amount without having any assets or wealth to back it up. In other words, local banks would now have the power of the Federal Reserve to create money out of thin air. It also advocated relaxing the so-called stress tests that force banks to show that they can withstand economic shocks. That's like taking the seatbelts out of your car. Okay, another story, this one coming out of Zero Hedge. Physical gold will soon break free from the paper market in spectacular fashion. I would love to see that, and I'm sure everybody who's invested in the physical metal would like to see that as well, because that paper market is used to keep gold prices down. Every time it looks like gold is about to take off, there's a flood of paper contracts that hit the market and drive the price back down. And the London Daily Gold Fix is calculated by taking the precious metal prices and the paper contract prices, which are being oversold, and blending them together to get that new lower number. But the reality is there's a lot more contracts for gold out there than there is gold to fulfill them. When the contracts come due, the holders of the contract are offered the cash equivalent of the gold, plus a little bit of vigorish on top of that to keep them quiet. But gold has surged 7.5% in a week because of the coronavirus panic. People are looking for a safe haven. I think people are going to be taking advantage of that. Over in Lebanon, they've announced a first ever default on their Eurobonds to the tune of $1.2 billion. They announced Saturday it will default on its Eurobond debt for the first time in its history. And the country has seen a recent change in government. Banks opened for merely about half of the past few months. Strict controls on hard currency, withdrawals and transfers abroad amid a liquidity crisis, a plummeting Lebanese lira since October, a run on dollars, and crushing public debt, which has lately blown up to nearly 170% of its gross domestic product, now about $89 billion. Prime Minister Diab confirmed in public statements the bond payment of $1.2 billion due today will not be paid. Okay, we got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're still talking about the economy. Now, apparently, Chinese property developer Oceanwide is trying to get rid of its mega money pits in San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Manhattan. They're willing to take a loss, but even at the discounted prices, they're having a hard time finding buyers. Businesses in China are struggling against the coronavirus, and a lot of them are thinking of invoking the force majeure clause in their contract, which says circumstances beyond their control, like war or natural disaster, allow them to evade certain contractual obligations. But under Chinese law, that may not be as easy as it sounds. Okay, over in Georgia, this is a good story. This is an up story here. There's a small community-based restaurant in Georgia, and they have this little thing called the Giving Board. Got a sign on it saying, just take it, no judgment. It's basically supplied by donations, and it offers food and drinks to customers in need of a little bit of help. And, we look at the enormity of the things that are going wrong with this country, with the economy and the coronavirus and all the wars and the political corruption and the insanity in our election system. And sometimes we forget that all of us working together locally, just a little bit of help to feed the homeless, to feed the hungry, that we can make a difference. And so for the owners of this restaurant, little tip of the hat. They're doing a good thing there. All righty. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials conducted raids on 3 residential buildings being used for a birth tourism scheme in Southern California. The buildings were being utilized by a birth tourism ring called UN USA Vacation Resort, and the entity charged pregnant foreign women around $50,000 in return for shepherding them through the U.S. visa and immigration process, with the understanding they would exploit America's birthright citizenship laws to ensure their children would be U.S. citizens. We just lost our video feed for some reason. And Mike, can you still hear me? Okay, well, I'm going to keep on going anyway. Okay, we've had a little bit of a problem. I don't know if I'm on the air or not yet. Let's see. Okay. Okay. All right. So I'm still on the air. Okay. So here we go. We talked about this before, but since this is the part of the show where we talk about immigration here, Turkish police are using drones to organize tear gas attacks on the Greek border guards. And they're using these drones to organize attacks against Greek security forces tasked with protecting the nation's borders from thousands of migrants attempting to illegal cross into the country. And as we mentioned before, a Turkish armored vehicle pulls down the border fence to allow the migrants to just flow into Greece. This happened on Friday. Now, people smugglers are now running a discount operation. They have slashed the price to 13 euros per migrant, claiming that Erdogan gave them instructions. Apparently, they're openly operating on the Greek-Turkish border, and the prices have dropped to 13 euros per head. Well, heck, even I could afford that. Okay. According to Prime Minister Orban's advisor, 130,000 migrant invaders are on the Balkan route. This according to Georgi Bakondi, National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister. This was also announced on the radio last Friday. Trump has finally announced a crackdown on the sanctuary cities. Bolstered by the Supreme Court decision, the federal government is going to be withholding funds. I think it's long, long, long overdue. Now, the head of the Swedish Democrats goes to the EU-Turkey border to try and halt migrants before they set out, saying Sweden is full. Sweden's had a huge, huge problem with the migrant population, increased crime, rapes, all kinds of problems. I think Europe has really about had it with this whole open borders idea. Okay, we're going to take a phone call now from Kelly in Austin. Aloha, Kelly. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi there. I heard one of your callers today talk about the layoffs in the oil industry in the Midland, Odessa area. And I know that all too well. As a young geologist, I was caught up in that back in 1986 in Midland. And I saw the industry decimated because the oil prices had fallen to $5.50 per barrel at that time. And it was driven largely by overproduction from Saudi Arabia, which was trying to drive American prices down so that they could take control of the American oil market. In the years since I returned to school and got a bit doctorate, I've talked with a lot of young geologists and engineers who asked me whether they should go into the oil industry. I tell them point blank, hell no. It's too volatile. You'll get all this education and then get deeply into your career, and the next thing you know, a swing in oil prices one way will end your career, and you'll end up doing something else. So it's a rough industry to be in, and it's one I wouldn't recommend really anybody jump into right now. The volatility really arises from the fact that we really have no assurance of stability in oil prices because it's an international market. And so I saw the devastating effects of an international oil market developing back in the 1980s. Glad I walked away from it. I consult for the industry, but I wouldn't go back into it.
Okay, pardon me. Well, hopefully this oil war between Russia and Saudi Arabia isn't going to last all that long. If it drags on for a long time, there was even a commentator on Fox News earlier today saying that Russia wanted to crush the American shale oil industry, just drive it all into bankruptcy, which unfortunately, as that earlier caller mentioned, with the lift cost, they could do it.
Well, it's all too easy to do it. I've done a lot of consulting for oil companies who are looking for water resources to develop their fracking operations. And those as a result of the fracking methods that they use, the price of the lifting price is very high. And at this point, it wouldn't take much more than, say, a $5 drop in oil to shut off practically nearly all fracking or all production from fracked fields in this country. We've not had low lifting costs in this country for a very long time, ever since we just explored for and developed all the big fields that had natural gas drive and water drive. And in the last several decades, we've had to resort to more aggressive methods of production, secondary and tertiary production methods, all of which drive the price per barrel way up. And of course, that means that there's not much room for error in your pricing. So when prices get down to say even the $30 range now, they become uneconomic. When I was in the industry as a young geologist many years ago, $5. If you got down to $5, you know, you couldn't produce. So it's a tough industry to be in. It's one that's highly sensitive to economic conditions, and especially when you have international conditions with, say, Russia on the one hand and Saudi Arabia on the other, really trying to establish dominance in the market. American producers really don't have much say in the matter. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see the United States on its knees again in the not too distant future, begging for oil or buying all of its oil from foreign markets, when we were in a perfect position here to do something with a sensible national energy policy to make sure that we wouldn't be beholden to OPEC countries, to Saudi Arabia in particular, or Russia, or Venezuela. Venezuela's having a hard time right now for our oil and energy needs. We're right back where we were 35, 40 years ago.
Well,
we've learned nothing.
You know, Goldman Sachs is saying that oil prices could drop to the low 20s per barrel. I mean, that's insane. We're used to thinking $75 to $100 per barrel, and for it to be down that low, that's going to be a big problem for the American oil industry.
It will be, and in many ways, I think the industry has only itself to blame for this, and the U.S. government really should bear part of the blame as well. In many ways, I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for the companies that are they're looking at hard times ahead. I saw what they did to me and many thousands of my fellow geologists and engineers in the 80s. But I look back, I look at it now, and as I said, they've learned nothing over time, and politicians have learned nothing. And so, as I said, we're standing right back where we were nearly 40 years ago, 35, 40 years ago, and they're looking at the same problems. Glad I'm out of it, and glad I'm nearly close to retiring.
Well, I hope we all have a decent retirement, because if the economy really tanks south, those Social Security checks won't be worth the paper they're printed on.
Well, I was looking at my investments today. I follow them very closely, and I mean, we're taking a beating, obviously.
Yeah.
And then I see several things behind this. To me, is a lot of it is just the panic button being pushed, and it's being driven by the media as well. And to me, it looks like there's just a lot of manipulation in the market. I see how things swing back and forth, and it looks to me like people are driving it down and then taking advantage of the low prices, driving it back up, and then selling off and then going back to lower prices. Whereas, you know, guys like me are caught. I have substantial investments, but they're ruining my portfolio right now. And they're ruining portfolios of millions of people right now. And as this thing goes on, the high rollers on Wall Street and the politicians who've got their heads shoved up their rear ends will not suffer one bit. The axe is going to fall, or the hammer's going to fall on the backs of people like me, and across the country. We'll end up big squeezed, and they won't. So if there's some, if I'm feeling some anger right now, a lot of anger, it's because I look at this and I think it's a game these guys are playing. They know that they're not going to lose. We will lose. they're going to walk out ahead of this thing. They'll come out smelling like a rose. But those of us whose portfolios are reasonably substantial compared with the average guy are just taking a beating right now, and we can't do anything about it. So I'm caught kind of in the middle here with the people who invested well and did our best to make sure that we had good portfolios that would support us through retirement, and that we could pass on something to our heirs. And I see this happening, and I think, this is just sinister. It's a sinister game these guys are playing.
Well,
they don't care.
I look at Monday and Wednesday of last week and wondering if we're seeing a classic pump and dump strategy, where they buy low and they sell high, and they're saying that something like $2.5 trillion has vanished from the market. Well, it's actually vanished from like your pocket.
Yeah. Well, what happens with a lot of people, and the reason a lot of people get hurt here, Mike, is that they see prices going down, and they'll rush to their brokers and they'll sell, and so they might have bought at a higher price, but they're selling at a much lower price, and so now they're really taking it on the chin. The losses right now actually are paper losses.
Yes.
And if you learn to sit still and wait it out and don't panic, sell everything you got, and so that you'll get pennies on the dollar, it'll eventually come back. But you're going to have to tolerate this long period of time during which these jackasses on Wall Street and their politician friends in D.C. are going to benefit from the volatility. It just makes me sick as hell to see this. I wouldn't mind seeing some of these people swinging from lampposts. I despise them that much.
I agree. I absolutely. I'm looking at what's happening today, and I keep thinking back to that movie, The Wolf of Wall Street, and just it's just a big party for them.
Oh yeah, it is. It is. They don't take these things seriously because to them it's all a big game. They know how to manipulate things, but the average investor isn't in a position to do anything like that. And if you're trying to outtrade them, you can't do that because I don't have the automatic trading capability that they do. But they can manipulate things in a hurry, bam, and then before I can do anything, I'm lost. So my position is, okay, I'm going to sit still and I'll outwait you SOBs. They'll have to come back eventually. But how long will that take? I don't know. It could take a very long time.
Yeah, that's the big question.
Yeah, and I'm 68 now. How long is it going to take me to recover what I've lost so far? I don't know. It could take years, to tell you the truth. And I don't want to have to wait that long to recover that.
Well,
anyway, I look forward to seeing you again after your little hiatus here, and I hope you get everything taken care of. We look forward to seeing you again, Mike.
All right. Well, we're going to be restarting the system during this upcoming commercial break and try and get everything back online. So thank you for the phone call, and we're going to let you go. We have another caller waiting on the line, but we're going to wait till we come back from the commercial break. Apparently, ICE agents have snubbed the sanctuary city law and arrested an illegal alien as he entered the San Francisco courthouse. Well, great that they're ignoring that sanctuary city law. It's illegal anyway. You can't have a law that's based on a crime because it's all a violation of Title VIII. Okay. Apparently, Hulu has a documentary out on Hillary Clinton, which I have no intention of watching. And she calls herself there the most investigated innocent person in America. I have a feeling that Hulu is going to resent or regret the money they spent on this. Okay, we're going to take a break here. We're going to try and restart our little system and try and get our video back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We got a caller on the line, Terry in California. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, you were just talking to Kelly about, you made a comment about if this happens, your Social Security check won't be worth anything anymore. Were you talking about a monetary reset?
I'm talking about the value of the dollar going down to zero.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Inflation. So that means all money's going to be worth nothing. Social Security is going to be worth nothing. And I get all my income from the government, or, you know, military retirement, the VA disability. And and a lot of people are wondering about the same thing. So you're talking about rampant inflation taking off, right?
Absolutely. I mean, the Federal Reserve injected quite a bit of liquidity into Wall Street last night to try and goose it up, but that didn't work.
Right. So that whole scam of printing money might be coming to an end then, huh?
It certainly looks like it to me.
So that will, how do you see a monetary reset? Do you think, you know, what are they going to do about that when that happens? What do you see as far as a monetary reset goes, or do you see one?
I think if the value of the dollar becomes virtually non-existent, there's going to be a horrendous crash, and I think people are going to turn on the government, and I think the government itself is going to be brought down, and then we have to just quick like a bunny form a new government to take care of the people of this nation and stop mucking about with the rest of the world. And the first item on the new constitution is going to be no more private central banks. You have a value-based, commodity-based currency, and that imposes automatic safety measures. You know, it prevents runaway inflation. I mean, all of the evils that we've had to deal with for the last century all come out of private central banking. Private central banking has ruined pretty much every country that has adopted it.
Right. But in order to take over the government, like you say, you know, a new constitution and all that, we got to be ready. And I don't see anybody getting ready. I know, is there anybody out there that anticipates this? It's got a big real plan to come in? Because if there's not anybody like that, the evil people are going to take charge again.
Well, my feeling on that subject is that it's not going to be a case of taking over the government. It's going to be a case of the old government, you know, just gets on their planes for the Cayman Islands, and the American people, those who are willing to undertake the reconstruction, will just walk into our capital city and set up shop. I'm hoping it'll be done bloodlessly. It could happen like the Romanian Revolution. It could happen, you know, any one of a dozen different ways. I'm personally hoping for the bloodless handover of power.
So am I. But in the meantime, you know, the supply chains and everything's going to be interrupted in that case. Okay, Mike, I'll talk to you next time then.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to take a break for station identification. Join us on the air, 800-313-9443. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And we're going to go to Kevin in West Virginia. Aloha, Kevin. Welcome to our mind today.
Hello, sir. Well, the economics is on my mind in this whole COVID-19 coronavirus thing. You know, part of me feels like this virus, this whole thing seems synthetic to me, meaning this is an attack on our economics. Or on the world economic. I mean, look at what's going on. I don't think this virus is as deadly as what they're saying it is, and it's just pure hype. But look at, like, supply lines. Your last caller was talking about supply lines, supply chains being shut down. Sure, that could put us in complete devastation. But the same thing too. Look at the stock market this morning, you know, or all day today. I definitely think this is meant to cause panic. I mean, these test kits coming out, you're going to see that a lot of people are going to have this virus, and, you know, it's going to cause panic, and people don't panic if you have it. It's not going to, the death rate is not that high. Sure, you're going to get sick, but you're not going to die from it, especially if you don't have any comorbid, you know, other problems going on with you. I just think this is just an attack, a synthetic attack on our economics, and I think it's meant to probably, you know, start some type of civil unrest. And I hate to say this, and I hate to politicize it, but I do think it's an attack to try to get Trump out. I really do. I think it's multiple layered.
Well, anything is possible at this point. I mean, I keep seeing more and more articles about how this is a synthetic form. And Again, I still favor the idea that it was being created in that Chinese BSL-4 lab in Wuhan and somebody dropped a test tube. But again, a lot of people are thinking this was a biological attack by the United States on China to wreck their economy as being a direct challenge to the United States. Now, obviously, looking at the stock market this morning, it has backflashed onto us.
Sure. I mean, and the elephant in the room that nobody's talking about is that this was a man-made weapon. This was a biological weapon. Nobody's talking about that. And I think that needs to be pushed out, in the mainstream. Like Joe from Tennessee, we're never going to know. But, I mean, we know. We know this was man-made. We know that they were messing with this, in North Carolina and as well as, in the Wuhan lab or whatever that lab was in China. I mean, that's the elephant in the room that I think needs to be brought out. Why were these people messing and tinkering with biological weapons? They shouldn't be. I mean, didn't Boyle write a biological law a law saying that it's illegal to make offensive biological weapons? I mean, why isn't this being enforced?
Well, it's a treaty. It's an international treaty against biological weapons. Unfortunately, a lot of countries are not complying with it, including the United States of America. And I guess their thinking is if the U.S. is going to continue to make these, then we need to make them. Now, part of the justification is that they invent new biological weapons in order to discover ways to defeat them. But of course, there's virtually no difference between a defensive biological research and offensive biological research.
Exactly. I mean, and the people that's, doing these offensive research, they need to be arrested. Like Peter from I think his name was Peter from Los Angeles. These people that are messing with this death science, they should be arrested. I mean, there's nothing wrong with defensive, but there's no reason at all to be working on offensive biological agents or biological weapons at all. It's insanity. You're working with technologies or viruses that could wipe out mankind, possibly wipe out mankind. I mean, this is insane. Like, why? I just don't understand. But thank you for your time. I just wanted to say that I feel like this has been an attack, on the United States and definitely on the economics, on our economic system of things. I mean, and it's, I think we live in some pretty crazy times. I mean, everybody put your seatbelts on and hold on. I think it's going to get crazy.
I think you're right, unfortunately. Now, of course, tomorrow we could wake up and the stock market could be soaring up 2,000 points rather. But it's feeling very dicey right now. And there are so many things that are wrong with this country. And we could be seeing the beginning of a cascade. Where the economy the coronavirus pushes on the economy pushes on manufacturing pushes on consumerism, and so forth and so on.
Exactly. Well, you have a great day, sir, and give Miss Claire the best. And I hope you have a great rest of the show.
All right, I certainly will. Thank you very much for the phone call. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. We got time for some calls in this hour number 3. Getting on back to the Hulu documentary on Hillary. Apparently, one of the clips in there is Bill Clinton, who admitted he had sex with Monica Lewinsky to manage his anxiety over being president. And the instant I read that, the first thing I said is, wasn't he having sex with Hillary to manage his anxiety? And if not, why not? Food for thought there. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. So let's talk a little bit about Harvey Weinstein. Apparently, he's got the whole floor of the prison to himself. Okay? Apparently, the floor has 30 dorm-style beds, but apart from Harvey, it's completely empty. And he's living alone on the 6th floor of the main building of the North Infirmary Command at Rikers Island, New York. Apparently, he's got junk food, good medical care. He's still playing for sympathy. When his sentencing comes up in another week, he's going to take his little walker and he's going to walk on into the courtroom and stand before the judge and say, I'm really infirm. I'm going to die soon anyway. Why are you going to put me in jail? Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. That locust plague that started in Africa is still spreading. It's hit Pakistan. Swarms are decimating entire harvests. The country has declared a nationwide emergency. And the insects have fanned out. They're wreaking havoc on farms from East Africa to India. Apparently, they're saying heavy rains and cyclones sparked unprecedented breeding and explosive growth of the locusts. Okay, we talked about this one last week, but I want to hit it again because I think it's a little sick. Apparently, a school in Brooklyn handed out stickers to 4-year-old children during a drag queen storytime event that said drag queen in training. The stickers were handed out by the unnamed private school during a family day that included the appearance of drag queens. Talk about your basic indoctrination. Now, if somebody wants to be a drag queen, there's plenty of places to do that. You don't need to go after the little kiddies. Because again, the drag queens are a tiny, tiny, tiny portion of the general population. All right, let's grab a phone call from Tom in Florida. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Good day to you. Yeah, Michael. Yeah, I was hearing a couple of your callers talking about Trump. What is Trump doing? What is Trump not doing? Whatever. Look, this has nothing to do with the economy. What's going on with all this nonsense this ain't about Trump, okay? This is about the Chinese and Russians and all this other nincompoops in the world that are. Look, the Chinese got over a billion people. I mean, they talk about the coronavirus. They got sex factories. I watch videos. I don't know if you ever saw them where they have about 10,000 people in a gymnasium or like a gym, whatever. So it's crazy whatever I saw. But yeah, Michael, hearing about well, you know what? I can tell you right now, gasoline in South Florida went down 9 cents in the last 3 days. Now the regular gas here in South Florida right now is $2.03. Our gas price is at $2.03 for regular. So, you're not gonna. I mean, I think it's actually a good thing. I hope the gas goes down to $1.25 a gallon. The people in the stock market, I'm sorry about them. You know what? But if the gas goes $1.25, Michael, it's a good thing. And plastics are going to get cheaper. Transportation will be a lot cheaper. In a ways, there's a lot of good stuff coming out of this. As far as the coronavirus, look, like Trump said the other day, you had over 18,000 people died of the flu last year. They didn't make a big deal about the flu, but all of a sudden, this thing's coming out of China. Everybody's going to die. Give me a break. This is a bunch of nincompoops nonsense.
Okay, Tom.
Can you imagine if Bernie Sanders or Biden were in there, Michael?
Tom. Okay, I mentioned this earlier in the show, but I'm going to mention it again. Everyone's talking about the number of people killed by the flu. But prior to 2 months ago, when COVID-19 became kind of well known, how many of those flu deaths were actually the COVID virus? I mean, we could have a large number of COVID-19 deaths that have been misdiagnosed as flu deaths. So we need to keep that in mind when we talk about comparing the numbers.
Well, yeah, Michael, that's a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing what's going on. There's no doubt about that. But
Okay.
Michael, the media never talked about the 5,600 Americans who've been murdered by illegal aliens. You don't hear about that. How come the market did crash when all these Americans are getting murdered by people who ain't supposed to be here? I mean, we're not hearing nothing about that. But, Michael, did you hear what's going on tonight with Corey Feldman thing on Jesse Waters Saturday night?
No, enlighten us.
Well, Saturday night, Jesse Waters had Corey Feldman on. Corey's going to expose his $20 thing tonight. It's going to happen all tonight. Supposedly it's going to happen at 9 o'clock tonight. You pay $20, and he's going to tell you who the Hollywood Dark Angels are. We're doing all the raping and drugging these young teenagers out, boys and girls. According to him, he was drugged out, passed out in bed. He wakes up, and he was basically molested. And he said the same thing happened to Corey Haim, and this is Corey Feldman, and other childhood actors. So we'll see. It's going to be out tonight, according to when he was on Jesse Waters Saturday night. It's going to be out tonight, and that'll be interesting.
Where is it streaming from?
What's that?
Where is it streaming from? Where do people go to see this?
Oh gosh, it's Corey. I have it written down, and I have to go in and get it. It's on they just had it on. It's it's Corey. The taking of two Corys. He had to change the names or something. It was on Jesse Waters' program where he got the website. I wrote it down. I have to go in the house and get it, but I'm not in the house right now. But you can go check out Jesse Waters' Saturday night show, and he left Corey Feldman gave all the information on Jesse's show, which has quite a few million viewers. So I'm sure quite a lot of people probably end up watching it. I'm gonna put it on, so I'll give you more insight on it tomorrow. But he was saying one of the guys that raped him was the mother told him to go in the car with the guy, and he was a friend of a producer. He was actually like the casting director. And
Okay.
Corey's mother told him. And he was on for like I guess for like a 7-minute segment with Jesse Waters. So that'll be interesting. But no, getting back to the virus too, Michael. Though you were talking about the ship outside of Oakland. I guess it's in the port of Oakland or something.
Yeah, it's docked in Oakland now.
Right. I think they're going to end up taking them to a military installation, and they're going to probably bring them out over on one of those installations on the coast of California, and we'll see what happens. I mean, but Michael, I still like to ask you this: what is this caused by? A bat? Was it a bat? Was it a rat? What's causing this virus? Was it?
Well,
nobody can get rid of.
The official story is it's a bat virus, and we know that the Wuhan BSL-4 lab was working with bat viruses when this outbreak happened. One of the researchers got spattered with blood, self-quarantined for 2 weeks, but we now know that the incubation period of this can last up to 27 days, which would fit with this Princess Cruise ship having had somebody die of the coronavirus a month ago and still infected people today. Personally, I think it's a biological weapon, work in progress. It wasn't finished, and somebody dropped a test tube.
I agree with you, Michael. I don't think. I mean, they're saying. I guess in China they eat all kinds of different animals, exotic animals, bats. I don't know if they eat bats or rats or dogs or cats, but to me, it's like. So one person got it. Now it's spread all over the world, basically. I mean, wow. I mean, they had a lady on today talking about, they keep talking about nuclear war and this and that, the Chinese. Can you imagine if, according to what I heard, Michael, in Atlanta, there's a vial, I believe it's 10 inches long and it's 3 inches wide. Have you heard about that vial they have in Atlanta?
No. You're talking
There's a vial in Atlanta. What's that?
You're talking about the CDC?
Yes, the CDC has a vial in Atlanta. And if they unleash that vial, it would kill over 300 million people worldwide. Did you hear about that?
No, I didn't.
Well, I don't know if the lady was saying it was a bubonic plague or it was like some nerve. I really don't, I should have paid more attention, but it was like, they have a vial in Atlanta. I guess I don't know how deep it is, but this thing has got the potential to be worse than like 50 atomic bombs. I mean, what's going on here with all this? I don't know what the public's being made aware of what's really going on. And then we're only talking about the United States. We're not talking about China, Russia, Israel, all these other countries that got these biological factories or whatever you want to call them. It's insane. It really is. But the bubonic plague alone, I believe, I read this years ago that if you had a small dish of the bubonic plague, you could kill millions of people. You heard about that?
Yeah, I've heard about that. But bubonic plague can be cured today.
Yes, yeah. Well, I believe the bubonic plague was caused by rats, correct?
It was actually carried by the fleas on the rats.
The fleas, yeah, correct. There you go. Thank you. The fleas on the rats, right? And I believe, yeah, bubonic plague. Yes, you can cure it, but it's just like I believe what they're going to end up doing, Michael. They're going to end up probably pushing a vaccine out within the next 6 weeks. They're going to go way ahead of the trials. They're just going to they're just going to bring it out within 6 to 8 weeks. They're probably going to have a vaccine for this. I'm believing. I mean, open kind of. But, you know, we're hearing about this virus, and we're hearing about the Russians and the Saudi Arabians fighting them over the oil. Man, it's just unbelievable. And, you know, Michael, speaking of that, you'd like to talk about Mars a lot. I heard that they're getting close to having a propulsion system that actually could go way beyond Mars. Did you hear about that?
Well, it's not the distance it travels, it's the speed that it travels at. And it could actually make Mars reachable by manned travel. I mean, in terms of, you know, traveling far, look at Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. They're already out in interstellar space.
Right. So, you know, I believe that, you know, mankind will, hopefully, like with this coronavirus, they'll come up with some kind of, you know, you can get inoculated from it or something. I don't know. It's just crazy medically what's going on with this. Now, all of a sudden, right before an election year, all this is breaking out. The year that Trump's going to be trying to get his second term, all this nonsense is going out. And then still got this two wackos, Bernie and Sleepy Joe, or I don't know what. That's another situation with this Joe Biden, Michael. Oh, by the way, did you hear about his brother being indicted?
Yes.
James Biden. Well, according to what they're saying now, he's ripped off millions of dollars. So we'll see. And they're not even talking about Hunter right now. They're talking about the brother.
Yeah,
so
that
should be very
a heck of a load for Biden to be carrying into the general election.
Yeah, right. And I have a feeling this Biden's going to pick this Klobuchar, Amy, as his VP. I have a funny feeling. He's going to try to get that state of Minnesota.
I have a different feeling. I think the deal's already been made for Hillary to be his VP. And then, you know, Biden will win. If Biden wins the presidency with Hillary as his vice president, then he'll step down because of his dementia, and she gets to be president after all.
Well, I don't think it would be Hillary. I think it's either going to be, you might even pick that Kamala Harris. Who knows? The Kamala, it's either Chameleon or Kolbach or whatever, Amy. It's going to be one of them. I don't think it's going to be
Gabbard. I'd love it if he picked Tulsi Gabbard, but I think the deal's already been made. Anyway, Tom, got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be back in just a few minutes with more phone calls. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones to Milton in Pennsylvania. Aloha, Milton. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, yeah, I've been listening to all the intake on this virus thing, and, you know, from what the other people have been talking about, it appears like this is like misdirection for another purpose.
And what would that purpose be?
That's why I'm putting that out there. I don't know, but it seems like there's another, you know, misdirection like a magician does.
Yes.
And then, you know, like you said, the collapse, you know, and then the gentleman before was just talking about the vaccine and stuff. They'll probably make it mandatory, which I would refuse to do. I don't trust my government giving me a shot, you know.
Well, remember what happened in 1976 with the mandatory swine flu vaccine. It killed 50 times as many people as the flu did.
Yeah, you know, the only thing I can say, I hope it don't get as bad as other people may have suggested, you know, with violence and the government collapsing, you know. The bottom line is, you know, I've been listening to input from here, you know, and I'm preparing myself the best we can with against the virus, you know, food and all that kind of stuff, and of course a lot of range time, you know.
Yeah,
that's about all I had to say on that.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call. And we're going to let you go and switch over to Robert in Illinois. Aloha, Robert. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Mike. Yeah, well, your last call, I'm going to bounce around here. Your last caller is right. It is a lot of misdirection. This is why they have, you know, they always knew it was best to have control of the media, the newspapers, and so on, so they can hype this stuff up. And it's a multi-layered agenda. You asked the guy, you said, hey, so what would that misdirection be? What would it be that they're trying to do? It's multi-level, man. They're stealing money. They're getting people in a frenzy. They're having people panicking. They're putting us at disease as it is. They're stressing us out. They're lowering our immune systems just by that. That they're trying a cultural change. Don't shake hands anymore. Don't get in crowds. Stay away from other people. Look at Italy. Don't kiss each other on the cheek. You got to change your whole cultural habit now. So they're trying with cultural change. They're really going the gambit here, Mike. And then the ultimate play, in the end, it's going to be to give vaccinations credibility, because now, look how bad this is. We've hyped it up to such a point that, we've now got a vaccine and you have to get this because look at how many, people we're telling you are dying from this virus and so on and so forth. So they want to get a legitimacy. And of course, not only do the nefarious things that you usually do to the vaccines, but also the money they make from it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I mean, there's so many tiers to this. And then not to mention the political aspect of, the White House and Trump and Clinton and all that, so the political play on it, so it's crazy, man. I mean, you're one of your callers is like, oh, we're in a crazy time. So, all of history for man has been crazy, but it was saber-toothed tiger, it was bad water, it was, not cooking your food all the way. We've always been in dangerous times, but the problem is when people manipulate this stuff. If this was just organic stuff, we'd come out with organic cures and herbs and tinctures, and we would get by it just like we have throughout history. But these people are manipulating it. That's a huge difference.
Yeah, you're right. It is being manipulated. There's no question about that. And it's one of the reasons for the uncertainty in that we don't really know what's going on, either with the economy or the coronavirus. And we do know that our news and our perceptions are manipulated on a permanent basis by the corporate media.
Yes, sir. And as far as you were saying, people keep bringing up the flu stuff, but on a regular annual basis, people in America alone, 30 to 60,000 people do die of influenza for one reason or another. In China, 1 million people, it was said, die of influenza every year in China. So, it is a common occurrence. But yes, how many people do we not know in the United States right now that actually were affected with this man-made coronavirus, which is a Crimea, because they took the SARS virus, which was already weaponized, and then they added this HIV element, and this encephalitis element, and this stuff that gets all the way down to your lungs, and it could actually damage your organs in the long run if you don't, build up, fight it off immediately with your natural immune system, or, colloidal silver or iodine or whatever else you can think of, oregano. So this is weaponized, and it has come out of China. Look at the benefit of China. China is 45 trillion in debt, and if what they could do could affect the rest of the world, this is like, because we're looking, Jill Salenti says we're headed for the Great Depression, worse than the Great Depression.
We are.
So Joe Salenti's been saying that for a year and a half, 2 years, and look at all these bubbles worldwide. The whole world is 245 trillion, if not more, in debt. The whole worldwide economy. So they're looking for this for their own bailout. So they can blame it on something else, and this world falls apart.
We just need to zero out the debt, start the whole system over. Anyway, listen, Milton, got to let you go. I'm sorry, Robert in Illinois, got to let you go, and we'll be back with another phone call after these 2 words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Miles in Maine. Aloha, Miles. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind today?
Michael. I was just thinking, Michael, and I always like to run this stuff by you. What do you think the practicality would be of this virus here? I agree that it's something with the economy. But this virus scare and the fact that persuading people to get into this vaccination perhaps might be something that is an asset and an assistant for this 5G network to maybe, activate or create a situation within the humans with this 5G system combined with the vaccination.
Well, I really don't think that there's a connection between 5G and COVID-19, and it has to do with the fact that even at the high frequency 5G operates at.
No, I'm not saying COVID-19. I'm saying that the vaccination for the COVID-19 and using the 5G as a reactant to, bring about whatever desired response they might want to within humans.
Well, the same thing applies to the vaccine as applies to COVID-19. Even at the high frequency 5G operates at, the wavelength is very long relative to the size of the molecules that are involved in there, because we're presuming that a COVID-19 vaccine will be an attenuated virus vaccine. So it's going to have something that sort of looks like the COVID-19 and is about the same size. So I really don't see that as feasible.
Well, let me ask you this then. On the other hand, do you think that perhaps 5G would kill this COVID virus?
Not without killing the people around it.
Okay. All right, Michael. Well, thank you very much. Have a good show now.
All right, thanks an awful lot. And we're going to go to Jesse in Texas. Jesse, thank you for waiting patiently. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Mike. This is like the third time I called you. I'm really excited, so I'm probably going to be talking kind of weird. I'm so glad that you're back. First of all, I mean, if it meant that you couldn't come back, then I'd rather you not have, because I mean, I really like you, and I've only seen you on the YouTube, Other than I'm glad that you're doing great. Thanks for coming back and all that, but I'm going to get to my points already. The first one is Trump. And I voted for him, and it's not only Trump, but I feel like the whole government kind of turned into like a reality show. Everything is almost like if you're watching a TV show, like the Kim Kardashian. I wanted to know if you agreed with me on that.
Well, a lot of it is kind of like reality TV. And as I said to that earlier caller, we live in a state of constant manipulation by the corporate media.
Mm. Yeah. The other one is I've been listening to the callers, and I agree with them on they're not teaching our kids history. My son, something came up the other day, and we ended up having to go into the Great Depression. He didn't even know what that was, and he's already in the 4th grade. He didn't know what that was. He didn't even know what a hobo meant, and I know that hobo was a term that came up during the time of the Great Depression. Right? Am I right or no?
Yes, you're right. Hobo is a contraction of ho boy, which was an itinerant farm worker.
Yeah. So, and it's not even, I mean, and I have a 14-year-old as well, and they don't, I mean, they really don't know anything. I don't know what I don't even know what they're learning in school either. Last year I was able to go to my son's school and have breakfast, and for some reason they don't allow that anymore, and they really don't want you eating lunch with them anymore either, because it for the children that the parents don't go, it leaves them out. So they kind of canceled that stuff. Another thing I'm gonna leave you with, and it's just a joke. It's Art Off the Grid is Dustin from New Jersey. I felt like that was a cool little funny conspiracy kind of thing I wanted to tell you. And that's it, really. I'm just glad that you're back, and
Thank you.
I usually don't call. So, goodbye.
All right, goodbye. Thank you very much for the phone call. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Well, a little bit of a story with a happy ending. As you know, if you go through an airport checkpoint with too much cash, they'll just take it on the assumption that you have nefarious purpose involved. So apparently the TSA at Pittsburgh International Airport seized $82,000 from a man. Now, why he was traveling with that much cash with him, we don't know, but it was his life savings. We don't know what he was going to do with it. But apparently the Drug Enforcement Administration, for once, took a look at the case and said, no, this was perfectly innocent, and they returned his property. So he got all of his money back. Finally, they're starting to listen to people who say, look, I have a reason to be carrying this much cash, and it's got nothing to do with drugs. It's got nothing to do with terrorism. It's just I'm involved in transporting cash, and it's my cash. So deal with it here. Okay, out in Hawaii, and one of the reasons why I'm starting to be glad I'm no longer there, they're passing the severe ammo restrictions. And it's sort of modeled after what they have in California, where since July 1st of last year, gun owners have been required to undergo a background check just to purchase ammunition. Now, the program has been a complete and utter disaster. In December, the Sacramento Bureau tens of thousands of law-abiding Californians have been improperly denied ammunition purchases under the program, while only 101 were actual prohibited persons who were rejected. According to the report, between July 1st and November, nearly 1 out of every 5 ammunition purchases were rejected by the California Department of Justice. So, with such a stunning success, Hawaii is coming out with an even more intrusive scheme to harass law-abiding ammunition buyers. They call it House Bill 2736. Now, they may not be confiscating the guns or banning the guns, but if they ban the ammunition or if they ban the supplies for home loaders, it amounts to the same thing, a disarmed American people. The reason for the Second Amendment is not hunting, it is not target shooting. It is to give the people the means to withstand government tyranny. And as our government gets ever more abusive, looks like the founding fathers were absolutely right about that. Honeywell says it has built the world's most powerful quantum computer. And basically, when it comes to quantum computers, we tend to think of companies like Google and IBM as the big players. But Honeywell says sometime in the next 3 months, it will unveil a quantum computer that's at least twice as powerful as any current device. Now, my understanding of quantum computers, for certain specialized tasks where the granularity of the task matches the qubits, they're very fast. But the quantum computers that are out there working on real-world problems, basically they're not that much faster than more conventional computers. Maybe that will change. After all, quantum technology is brand new here. Okay, over in Tel Aviv, there's a new company called Halo Technologies. They've raised $60 million in a Series B investment round, and they're starting up to produce artificial intelligence microprocessors, dedicated microprocessors. And the round was participated in by strategic investors, including Switzerland-based ABB Technology Ventures, NEC Corporation, and London-based Latitude Ventures. Existing investors such as Man of Mobility and Nextgear Management also participated. This brings Halo's total funding to date to $88 million. Okay. Founded in 2017, Halo develops microprocessing chips for artificial intelligence applications on edge devices used in autonomous cars, unmanned aerial vehicles, Internet of Things devices, and smart home appliances. Well, so what happens when we make machines that are more intelligent than we are? Something worth thinking about here. All right, over at Facebook, they've removed advertisements from President Donald Trump's re-election campaign. Activists say violate the social media platform's policies forbidding the spread of misinformation about the U.S. Census. By the way, speaking of the census, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is encouraging illegal immigrants to fill out the census forms. They're not supposed to be here. They shouldn't be counted as citizens, let alone to draw voting district boundaries. Over at Virgin Media, they're dealing with the aftermath of a major security breach in their system. 900,000 customers are at risk, almost 1 million. And apparently they left a database containing personal details unsecured for 10 months. And the incident occurred due to a member of staff not following correct procedures. Personal details such as name, home address, email, even date of birth were all easily accessible. Just insane. It's just insane. Okay, I don't know how many of you are fans of Doctor Who. Claire is, or at least was up until the current season. And we've talked about this before, how this season Doctor Who has gone totally politically correct. They've got a woman doctor, which is okay. She's being described as a token minority doctor. This is from Russia Today. And they've got a BBC head doubling down on woke politics. And Doctor Who in its current season has got problems. Bad writing is dragging the ratings down as the production team seems to slide into denial. Now, we watched a couple of episodes of the new Doctor Who, and yeah, it doesn't have the magic that the old one did. And it is way too politically correct. So, over the years, Doctor Who has gone from being a British delight to a science fiction serial enjoyed worldwide. With a strong revival of the series back in 2005, the three memorable doctors that followed became pop culture icons. Each actor delivered a unique version of the character, with Christopher Eccleston, David Tennant, and Matt Smith becoming huge stars as a result. Now, after the 12th Doctor, played by Peter Capaldi, left the show, we were introduced to Jodie Whittaker's 13th Doctor, advertised as a momentous historic event, because it was the first time the Doctor was played by a woman. And I didn't have a problem with a woman doctor. I know a lot of the fans did. But it's the wrappings of political correctness that have really done in the show. And, you know, they keep making the same mistake all over again. Like the feminized Ghostbusters, that was a box office disaster. If you want to have more women in film, write stories for the women. Don't just cobble something that's already a success in the male-based universe, bring it on over, recast it all as women, and think it's going to be a success, because it won't be. The audience is already used to this story, this plot line, these characters being in a male-centric universe. Come up with something original, and it'll work. You can make it work if it comes up. I mean, Hollywood is so PC. Do you know they couldn't remake Moby Dick today in the current climate? Because all of the lead characters are white, the ethnic minorities are all subordinate characters, and there are no parts for women anywhere in it, and it shows cruelty to animals. Brit Hume had a little bit of whoopsie. He accidentally tweeted out his computer search history. He was tweeting out a screenshot of election betting odds, and one of the tabs up on the top was labeled Sexy Vixen Vinyl. Oh, Brit. Oh, Brit. What can I tell you? All righty. We've talked before about the Intel CSME bug, and it turns out it's a lot worse than previously thought. And they're saying a full patch of the problem requires replacing the hardware. Only the latest Intel 10th generation CPUs are not affected. Well, I wish it was that easy as to open up this box and put in a 10th generation CPU, but it's basically a complete rebuild, reload of the machine. The security researchers say that a bug in one of Intel CPU technologies that was patched last year is actually much worse. Now, to protect devices that handle sensitive operations, researchers recommend replacing CPUs with versions that are not impacted. But again, that's not trivial. It's not like putting new spark plugs in your car. You have to reload the BIOS, you have to reload the operating system, you have to reload all of the applications. Okay, Apple has issued a warning to dealers that they're running out of replacement iPhones. And this is because of the supply chain being affected by COVID-19, because these are all being made in China. Okay, Reddit is really cleaning house now on subs and content they don't agree with. And apparently they're imposing new mods and shutting down subs. There's a new study out showing that children are experiencing nightmares and anxiety amid the climate hysteria, been fanned up by the corporate media. They're traumatizing the next generation. Absolutely. Okay, over in Los Angeles, police were called out to do a welfare check on an actress, on this ER actress. And Vanessa Marquez hadn't harmed anybody. Police showed up at her South apartment, and the landlord had simply become concerned that she'd fallen ill and wasn't taking care of herself. So he called the police for help, and they came and they shot and killed her. Whatever happened to protect and to serve? That we treat you like a king. Okay, we're coming up here on our last commercial break, which will be followed by our last segment of the program, during which I've got a special announcement and an appeal to the Rivero's Rangers. So we're going to be right back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, last segment of our program today. And I'd like to remind everybody that I am taking a little less than 2 weeks away from the microphone. I've got a project to work on, and I can't do both at the same time. I will be maintaining the website, and there will be an announcement on the website as to when I come back to the program. Meanwhile, of course, RBN is trying to scrounge up some guest hosts so you're not just listening to 2 weeks of replays here. And a little program note here, Steve Elkins is going to be subbing for John Stedmiller in the National Intel Report, which follows my program here. Now, I have a mission for all you Rivero's Rangers. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to recruit just one, new listener to RBN. So think about somebody among your friends that shares your political views who is not listening to RBN, and just get them to sit down and listen to the program. And then when they become convinced and they become RBN listeners, we can have them go out and find one new listener. Because we really need to grow our audience. We need to reach more people in order to get the truth out there. So, one listener. Is that really too much to ask? All right, getting on back to the news here. Voyager 2. Boy, was it really that long ago? Oh, man. Apparently, they've managed to fix the power glitch on Voyager 2, and all 5 of the remaining instruments on Voyager 2 are back to gathering science data in interstellar space. Now, they had a little bit of a power glitch in late January. Voyager is powered by a radioisotope thermoelectric generator. Now, over time, of course, the radioisotope decays. That's where it generates the heat, which in turn generates the electricity. But after a while, there's less of the isotope and the power output will drop. Now, Voyager was only designed to basically do the tour of the solar system. So this is all free science that we're getting here right now. But NASA made the announcement back on the 3rd. Troubleshooting for the spacecraft is a slow process because of the distance from Earth. It takes 17 hours for each command to reach the probe and for data indicating what it did to reach engineers. 17 hours. Long, long, long time. Okay, now, getting on back to Harvey Weinstein. Apparently he's getting bored in the hospital, but it's a lot better than jail. They're claiming it's a previously undisclosed heart condition. And he had chest pains right after the jury convicted him. Oh, take me to the hospital. Take me to the hospital. They went straight to Bellevue instead of Rikers ahead of his sentencing. Apparently he's been moved from Bellevue to the hospital wing at Rikers, where he's got the floor all to himself. 30 beds on that floor. They're all empty except for Harvey Weinstein. And apparently he's eating junk food, which tells me that the previously undisclosed heart condition isn't what we're being told it is. But yeah, he's going to go into court and he's going to plead mercy for his serious medical condition and his near death, and hope that the judge will say, oh, you poor baby, we can't send you to prison. All right, there's the music. Time for me to get on out of here. Stay tuned for the National Intel Report with Steve Elkins. Please spread the word of RBN. One new listener for each of you. That's the deal. Please donate to RBN, and we'll be back in about 2 weeks. Aloha, America.